Sweet. Welcome to night 7 of our 8-night curriculum, the final week and kind of the last stretch, because tonight and tonight and Wednesday we'll all be working on the same thing. We are in a great spot. We have covered all the hard stuff leading up to this point. Now it's just kind of some of the fun stuff and putting a bow on top of it to build out our final presentation. It was kind of cool. I was talking with Patrick before a few of you guys joined, and he said he was trying to work ahead and looking at the one I had published out to Tableau Public. That's actually a great way to learn, is looking at what other people have built and then like trying to replicate it, because it forces you to think through like, okay, what would they have done to like get this to pop up, and how is this filter working? There's actually this thing, and I always like to give shout outs to Tableau Public because they do a great job kind of moderating that community. There's this thing called Makeover Mondays. If you guys ever wanted to get some extra work in, where essentially every Monday they will publish like a really bad data viz and then let you like download it and make it prettier and then like enter it in. I've never actually done one before, but I think there's like some bragging right contests and stuff. So feel free to check that out. I think I'm trying to find a good link to it. But honestly, like I just love scrolling through here. I actually had someone one time apply for a job with a resume that was published in Tableau Public. It was super cool. So I like clicking through some of these sometimes. But if you're ever looking for inspiration, you're like, I want to get some practice in, but I don't know where to start. Like, don't get overwhelmed with trying to find a data set or like trying to think what viz you want to build. Like a really good way to practice that is actually just going out and finding something else that someone built and trying to replicate it or trying to make it better. There's so many smart people out there doing the hard work already of coming up with an idea. Like, let them do that for you and then just work on the practice piece on top of it. So I think it's good to cover, I want to talk through Wednesday night again real quick. And then we'll talk through kind of what we're going to do tonight to get there. But just to kind of set the stage again, I want to refresh everyone with what we're working towards, because that'll be a majority of the, Iron Viz. You can enter right now. So again, I will drop this in the chat as well, or in the Slack, if anyone wants to kind of work ahead. But the Superstore self-service dashboard, this is what we're going to start building tonight. So the last two concepts that we haven't covered, because we covered parameters last week, so we worked ahead a little bit. The pieces that we haven't covered is dashboard filtering. So when I click into Nebraska or something, this dashboard updates, as well as dashboard hyperlinks, which is like when I hover over this and click this Learn More button, it opens up the Nebraska Wikipedia page. So we'll cover those two concepts tonight. But once we cover those, we will actually build the foundation, like we'll build the bones of this dashboard. And then I will send this after class tonight. This will be our final assignment that just has everything kind of listed out of exactly what you need to do, what you need to create, what it should be titled, so on and so forth. So again, if you guys do want to work ahead, feel free to do that. We will have, even if you get everything done before Wednesday, please still come to Wednesday's class. We'll have Nate or someone join and talk through next steps. So Luke was just talking about like, when does our next class start? What does the curriculum look like? Things like that. So he'll talk through that. We will also have certificates here. So the way it'll work is you guys will shoot me the link to your final project. I'll click through it, make sure it meets all the requirements that are in here. If you're in person, I'll just hand your certificate to you, shake your hand, you guys are on your way. If you guys are online, I will virtually show you your certificate, virtually shake your hand, and then mail the certificate in the mail, and you're on your way. So please plan on coming Wednesday, just because we'll kind of like put a bow on it and wrap up and talk about next steps and everything. But if you don't want to spend 3 hours building this on Wednesday and want to work ahead, definitely feel free to do that too. But I will be here for 3 hours on Wednesday, just like normal. And I definitely don't tell you exactly what you need to do in these requirements. So it would be good to, if you have questions, just have me here. We can share screens and walk around and stuff and build everything out together. So that will be what the next 2 nights kind of look like. Any questions about that before we get going?
Wait, did it start last week?
This is the last week for this course.
Okay.
I'm 90% sure that the next course starts next week, so you guys won't skip a beat. But I texted Nate, and if Stacey texts me back, I'll let you know for sure. But I would plan on your Mondays and Wednesdays continuing on just with whatever the next course is, which I think is a sequel course. But yeah, this is your last week with me. Sad. Cool. If there's no questions, let's get into it. I'm not going to share my PowerPoint because we've learned that those are boring, but I am going to click through it real quick just to make sure I'm not missing anything important. We covered parameters on Wednesday. We'll build those out again, so don't worry about that. Tonight, we are doing that. Those are easy. We'll do dashboard actions tonight. Those are easy. Yeah, we're totally fine. Make sure as we get going here, go ahead and open up Tableau Public. This will be like your final project Tableau thing. So like don't close out of it tonight. Make sure you save it, make sure you publish it. We will just build on top of this. We won't start fresh. So follow along, ask questions. If you get behind, ask questions because otherwise we're just gonna have to do it Wednesday anyways. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, big surprise, Excel, Superstore data. And we're gonna bring in orders and go to sheet 1. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and build out our map, and we're going to do everything dirty and scrappy and quick tonight, since the final project will basically be building it out more and making it look pretty. So don't get frustrated with me if it seems like I'm skipping over simple steps. I just want to make sure we have enough stuff to do on Wednesday as well too. But let's start with our map. So we briefly covered this on Wednesday. But again, anything that has a little globe by it is a geographical data point. So it automatically brings in your lat long. We're going to start with state. So you just go ahead and double click that. And it will automatically bring in your longitude and latitude and map all your different states here. We are going to start with something super simple. And let's just drag our sum of sales onto color. And we have our map done. Let's let me pull up my example so I can name stuff the right thing. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're gonna have to rename it eventually anyways. So let's just name this map. All right, then the second key piece of our final dashboard is going to be that scatter plot. So let's go ahead and start a new worksheet. Does everyone have the map? Head nods, any questions?
Is it okay if mine doesn't show Canada and Mexico, it just shows the US?
Totally fine.
Okay, then yes.
We're actually gonna wanna get rid of those eventually anyways, so you're one step ahead. Okay, our second sheet, let's go ahead and just double click sales, double click profit. And let's keep this super simple and just drag categories onto the color. So we should have a real simple scatter plot that looks like this. And let's name this scatter plot. Okay, now let's create a new dashboard. We've talked about some dashboard design stuff a little bit leading up to this point, but I want to go a little bit more in depth here. Obviously, to start with is the size. By default, it always gives you this min-max thing, which I hate. I typically change this from a range to a fixed size, and just like a generic desktop typically gives you a pretty good working space. We've talked through before, like if you change it from a fixed size to an automatic, there's pros and cons with that. One of the pros is that it'll automatically take up the largest amount of the screen that it can, which can be a good thing. But when you're building and designing stuff, you're building it and designing it for, like I'm using this desktop right here, you're using that laptop right there. So when people open it up, it'll automatically, right, it's in the title, shrink and resize to fit any screen that's displayed on. So it gets kind of wonky if people are viewing it on like TV monitors versus like an iPad or something like that. So that's why I typically like to keep it a fixed size, because it will always be, and you can adjust what that fixed size is, it will always be this size no matter what. So the cons of that are if someone opens it on something smaller, they're gonna have to scroll left to right to see it. But the pros of it is it will be the same size and formatting and look the same no matter what. So knowing your use case, knowing what people are gonna display it on, that's always kind of the first decision that you're gonna have to make with the dashboard. I always do fixed sizes. There's probably good use cases for automatic, but I just prefer to keep things consistently in design on my local for what people will be viewing on their end thing.
What did you do for custom size? My number was.
Yeah, so if you change fixed size, you can choose any of these. As soon as you start updating or messing around with like the width and height here, it will change it to say custom as opposed to one of these default ones. So yeah, like I started with generic or desktop browser or something, then said, hey, I want a little wider. It's like, okay, now this is a custom size here. Xavier, we're only like 1 minute in, so if you get Tableau Public pulled up real quick, I can catch up real quick. Because we're definitely going to be building on top of some of this, so there's no sense you being behind 2 minutes. We can catch up quick. Just give me a quick thumbs up when you have Tableau Public open with, we're just using our normal Superstore orders data set. Yep, perfect. Cool, so go to sheet 1. All you're gonna do is just double click state. And it should automatically drop like longitude and latitude up on your rows and column shelf. And then just drag sum of sales onto the color. And you should have this. Good. Oh, okay. Yep. And then the second one, all you're gonna do is just double click sales, double click profit. Oops. And then drag category onto the color. Good? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so step 1 with dashboard design is figure out what size you want to work with. Again, I typically go with just kind of a standard fixed size. Then we've always just kind of dragged and dropped stuff onto the dashboard, which works fine if you're only working with a few elements. And you can like easily bring them back and forth like this. However, on dashboards where you want to bring in like 10, 20, 30 different elements, it gets really, really tricky to like hover in the exact spot of like, I want this one in the top here, and I want this thing beside this thing at the top. Like it starts getting overwhelmed pretty quickly and you're like running out of space on where to drag these different things. So there's this concept called containers in Tableau on dashboards. What containers do right here, horizontal container and vertical container, is it just gives you a blank space to drag things onto. So if I drag a horizontal container on here, it looks exactly the same. But now if I drag my map and my scatter plot on here, it looks the same. But what it's doing is inside of here, if I hit this arrow button here and go select container, horizontal container, now it selects the container instead of the individual view. So click on a view, hit the arrow, select container. The benefits of this is now if I hit that arrow on the container, I can do distribute contents evenly. So now no matter what I drag in there, is this automatically going to space my stuff for me in an even format. And you can get really, really modular with it. And let's say maybe I want a vertical container, and you guys don't need to be following along right now because we're going to axe all this anyways. I could drag a vertical container inside my horizontal container, and I can drag a couple things inside my vertical container here. Now I can hit this arrow, do select container, vertical container, distribute contents evenly. So now my vertical container is evenly spaced. And this is, again, I can hit this arrow and do select container, horizontal container. It's inside my horizontal container. So if I could think of a good dashboard to show that has a lot of different stuff in it. I don't really want to show any proprietary builder trend stuff, but we have dashboards that will literally have 20 different things on here. And like dragging and dropping like each of them individually gets just really, really complicated really quick. So even for our final project here, like there's really just two things on here. We probably don't need containers. We can probably just tweak those couple things, easy peasy. But I did want to highlight the benefits of using horizontal and vertical containers because it does help kind of modularize your dashboard a little bit. Does that make sense? We won't be using them. I just want to make sure that I cover dashboard stuff. Cool. Then we might as well just rip through the rest of the objects here. If you just want to add like a little text box in here. So this isn't a dashboard, it's not a view, it's nothing. You just type in, this is a text box. Right, you can see it automatically evenly spaced it because it's inside my vertical container there. I can do whatever I want to this. I can make this really big. Sometimes I'll use these for like, instead of titles, or I'll give like a little description or something about actually what the data science team at work is doing now, that I don't manage it, so I can't claim it for my idea. But they're including a text box in every single one of their dashboards explaining what the dashboard is showing. So if someone views it with no context, they can just, they call it a data dictionary. They can easily read and catch up on like exactly what it's showing. So that's beneficial. Extensions are something we're not going to cover in this class. This would be like a Tableau 201 thing, but pretty cool. If you drag it over, there are people have built add-ons on top of like the standard out of the box Tableau environment. So these are like custom devs. You can see who's built these. Infotopics built this one. Star Schema built this one. Tableau actually built this one. It gives you, most of them are like really, really cool chart types that you can't build by default in Tableau. For instance, I'm sure some of you guys have seen like these bar race charts before, where it's like showing the top songs over time and like the years are going on and on and on, and you're seeing the bars like move up and down in real time. That was built like using an extension. I use another good one, Sankey diagrams. Have you guys ever seen things that look like this? That's a chart type that you can't build by default in Tableau, but someone built an extension that you can do it. Radar charts are another cool one that people use in like sports quite a bit, actually. Radar charts. So like in fantasy football stuff, they'll show like receiving yards, rushing yards, passing yards, and like show all these different categories and how far each one of them are. Just another chart type. If you want to do a deep dive into Tableau extensions, they're really easy to use. You just have to download them, and then it tells you exactly what you need. I will drop this link in the Slack channel. And feel free to dig into them. Just click into that link, click into literally any of these that you want, and it gives you a description, shows you some chart types and things like that that you can make. Kind of cool. But we're not going to be using them. Data story. This is something that you can't use unless you're connected to Tableau server, but it's just a way of embedding a story inside your dashboard. Not that crazy. Images are definitely something that I use a ton. I think maybe a few of you guys have actually used these in your homework before. Super simple. We will actually use this in our final project. You drag it over, you choose whatever you want to choose. Let's see if I can find that ODSA one. Thought I had ODSA saved. Oh, right there. So really simple. If you just want an image inside your dashboard here, you can center it or whatever. And then the last one is super, super simple. It's just a blank tile. So if I wanted my ODSA, you just use it for spacing. My ODSA down a little more. This would actually be a good use case of dragging on like a vertical container, dragging ODSA into that, and dragging my blank one atop the vertical container, right? Then I can just space it wherever I want. So maybe I want it in the bottom right. I can drag it down here and hit fit image. Yeah, so that's dashboard objects. Any questions on those specific objects? Again, we're not going to be using them a whole lot. Tonight's just kind of a catch-all to cover anything that we haven't covered up to this point. Okay, the very last thing I'll show you, and this is kind of a, heated debate in the same category of are pie charts good or bad? Do you like using R or Python more? There's not really a right answer. But if you hate the tile format of Tableau dashboards and hate having to have containers and evenly space them and drag stuff, and you just want to drop it on there, I think it's a true like left brain versus right brain decision. You don't have to tile stuff on dashboards. If you click this floating button here, and I drag over the text thing, now see how it doesn't snap above or below anywhere on my dashboard? I can drop this wherever I want. This is a floating text box. I can make this really big so that you guys can see it. So make it black. Now I can make this however big I want. I can drag it wherever I want. It doesn't have to be inside a container. It doesn't have to be beside anything. I don't like them because I have a really analytical brain and I like stuff to be always right here, always right there. I would just get bogged down with like the pixel decision of like, okay, is this perfectly spaced here? Is this mapped? Is it centered? But if you guys like it, and it works for anything, right? Like if I got rid of my scatter plot here, drag it off my dashboard, and drag it on here now, see how I'm selected floating instead of tiled. I can drag my scatter plot right here, make it as big as I want. So if you hate the tile and you don't ever want to worry about it ever again, you can do floating stuff constantly. I'm going to be building my dashboard using the tiled thing because that's just the way my brain works, but to each their own. Any questions on the difference between tiled versus floating? Okay, and then the very last, I keep saying the last thing, we have like 2 more hours. I'm going to show 100 more things, so I don't know why I keep saying that. But another thing is, someone asked me before how you get the dashboard title up there. I actually just now, for the very first time, noticed that there's just a checkbox right here to show dashboard title. I always go up to dashboard, click show title up here, but I guess you don't have to do that. You can just check and uncheck right here. So that's how you get your titles, or your titles in there. There are a few more objects in here as well, but none of them are super simple stuff, but feel free to explore them on your own. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just delete this Frankenstein of the dashboard that we just created and start from scratch, because all we really need on here is our map on, our map on the left and our scatter plot on our right. Everyone have this right now because this is what we'll be building off of. Cool. So the goal of tonight, the 2 goals, were parameters, which we already covered, and then dashboard actions. So the actions that we're going to be covering is a filter. So when you click into something, that updates, and the hover learn more thing. So we'll start with the filter. So to add a dashboard action, you just click up into where it says dashboard here and choose actions. And it gives you this little modal right here. So actions let you create interactive relationships between data, dashboard objects, other worksheets in the web. We are always going to show actions for this workbook. This is where all of our actions will be. You can actually create actions on individual sheets, not just dashboards, but I find that pretty limited. So I always add mine on the dashboard. But to add a new one, really simple, you just click add action. Now here are your different action types. Filter is pretty self-explanatory. You click on one thing, it filters everything else. Highlight would be if you want to click on, if you have like 2 charts side by side and you want to click on one and highlight where that same thing is on the other side, you can do that. Go to URL will be the other dashboard action that we use, where you click that little learn more button and it opens up the Wikipedia page. Go to sheet would be like if I wanted, maybe I have a really, really high level view on my dashboard, and then I have a different sheet that shows all the details. So you want to be able to drill in, like click into your high level one and show all the details below. You can do that. Change parameter. We already know how parameters work. We're just going to be showing our parameters here. But if I wanted to have a list, remember last week how we did, like you can choose between category, subcategory, and something else for your parameter. You can just show a list and like click on it in the list, as opposed to click on it on the parameter thing. We're just going to show our parameters, and then set value, something that we're not going to cover in this class, but you can change those similar to how you change a parameter. So the first one, let's just keep it simple and choose filter here. So adding a filter action is going to look like this. Whoops. There are a couple main sections here.
I think your friend's screen froze.
Okay. Thank you. Got me here? Cool. So just in case you missed that, all I did, we'll go back to the start. Dashboard, actions, add action, filter. Source sheet is going to be what are we clicking on? What's the source that we're clicking on? And then the target sheet is going to be based on what we click on in the source sheet. What sheet are we going to filter? So this is the actual filter that we're going to use for the final project. So our source sheet is going to be the map. So we only want the map checked. So when we click on the map, that will be the source of what we're filtering. And the target sheet is what we want to update. So we want to uncheck the map and only keep the scatter plot. So source sheet, click on the map, target sheet, filter the scatter plot. Run actions on either the hover, select, or menu. Let me actually just show you, I'll show you guys what each of those do.
What would happen if you have both checked?
Both checked, it would actually filter both ways. So,
I think you're frozen again.
Gosh, dang it. Thank you guys for keeping me honest. Let me, everyone stop following along. I'm going to run you through what all of these different things look like here. So we're going to keep both of these. The question was what happened if you kept them both checked. So we're going to leave them both checked. And then down here where it says all fields or selected fields, if it's all fields, this will basically say whatever is showing on that sheet. If there's 1 thing, 2 things, 5 things, whatever I click on, filter them all. Selected fields would be like if I only want to filter based on state, which is what we're going to do, only filter that specific field. So I'm going to leave everything, both things checked right here and all fields checked right here and hit OK. We'll come back and update that. So now if I click on Nebraska, you can see that this updates. And if we actually go to our scatter plot sheet, you can see that now in our filters, we have this new filter that we didn't add. It just says, hey, there's an action that you clicked on state, and it's filtered to just Nebraska now. I can also, since I left both of them checked, and I don't have a source sheet and a target sheet anymore, both are both, I can click on over here, and our states will update too, because I clicked on technology, right? So if I go to my map, you can see that the action says we're filtering on technology. The other thing that it's doing here, and I'm going to go through a few different dashboard actions. Right, here's the one we just created. If I click edit here, I'm running that action on select right now, so that's clicking on something. I can change that to a menu, and what menus are is when I click on this, it will pop up and say filter 1. So it makes you double click it. We're already filtered on Nebraska, so let's go to Texas, right? Sometimes that's kind of nice because people might accidentally click on stuff and it's like, hey, I actually want you to go through one extra step to filter it. Then the last thing you can do, if I go back and edit this, so we did the select, we did the menu, you can do on hover. I find hover very intrusive and annoying, but basically whenever you hover over something here, it updates, which might be great, but like if I wanted to actually look at Kansas, as soon as I drag my mouse off of it, right, it filters back to the way it was. So I find that a little too annoying to be beneficial. But those are the 3 different things: select, menu, hover. The other options you have, clearing the selection. So that would be let's change this back to select. Notice how when I click on Nebraska now, this filters. If I unclick Nebraska, it doesn't go back. That's because in my dashboard action, clearing the selection will keep the filtered values. So even though I've no longer selected Nebraska, it's still showing the filtered values for Nebraska over my scatter plot. I pretty much always go to show all values. So clearing the selection will show all values. So now if I click Texas, it filters. If I unclick Texas, it goes back to where it was. And you notice I'm still missing some states here because I clicked on something over here one time and I didn't ever unclick it to show all the values again. So now I have everything. But if you want to go back to following along, for this dashboard action, what we'll want, and let's actually, instead of calling it filter one, let's call this state filter. We just want our source sheet to be the map. And we just want our target sheet to be the scatter plot. We want it to run when people select, unless you guys like the hover menu, but I recommend the select. And we want, when we clear the selection, to show all values. Do those kind of these are kind of the four main parts of the filter. Do those make sense, or do you guys have questions? Cool. Then the very last thing, gosh, I say that so much. I need to hold myself to it. The next thing, for the map here, all we're showing, so all we have to filter by is state, so it doesn't really matter. But to get in good habits, I always like to be as specific as I can, because you might add a view on here someday that has, right? We've made tables before that have category and subcategory and region and different things like that. If I had all those things in there, it's kind of hard to keep track of what's being filtered back and forth. So I always try to be as specific as I can with what fields I'm actually want the filter to apply to. So I always change that from all fields to selected fields. And then all you have to do is go in here and choose state, wherever it's at, state. And it'll automatically pull in. It's not saying, okay, the target or the source field is state, the target field is state. It's gonna run when we click on the map and it'll update the scatter plot. It will run when we select a state, not hover or have a menu. And if we unselect a state, it will show all the different values. So if everyone has a filter that looks like this, let me know, I can open it back up. We can click OK. Now we have our state filter. We can click OK. And now it's already working. We click Nebraska, this updates. If we unclick it, it goes back. Texas, this updates. Unclicking it goes back. California, unclicking it goes back. Is everyone's state filter working so far? And let me know if it's not, because we're going to need it working. Do you have a question? I can't find it. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Do you need to go back? Yeah. All right, the next dashboard action that we're going to do is when we hover over a state, we get this little learn more button. And this opens up the Wikipedia page. So we're going to add a new action. So we're going to go up to dashboard, actions, and we're going to add a new one. So add actions. And this is going to be go to URL. So this will pop up. It looks kind of similar to the first modal that we had, just a little stripped down. We're going to name this learn more. And the source sheets, we're just going to uncheck the scatter plot, so it will only apply to the map. And notice how in my example I showed here, you had to hover over it to get that little learn more. That means that it's in the menu, right? Otherwise, if it was just on the select, as soon as we clicked on Nebraska, instead of seeing everything update here, it would just take us to a new page right away. It'd be really annoying. So that's a really good use case of when to use the menu option as opposed to the select. So and hover would be a mess. Every time you hover over something, you open up 50 new tabs. So make sure that you're on menu. URL target, this is just saying, do you want it to be a new browser tab no matter what, or just a new tab if no web page already exists? We're just going to keep it on that one. And then the URL, I will drop in the chat. The reason I like to use Wikipedia for the example here is no matter what state you're looking at, the URL format is consistent. So it's en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Wyoming. If I click on South Dakota, it's the same thing, South Dakota. If I click on Minnesota, right, it's Minnesota. So what we can do, let me go ahead and copy this in here so you guys can just copy and paste it. So you can grab this URL from the Slack. And we're going to paste it right here. So this will give us a little preview. Okay, I guess we do want I thought the HTTPS came automatically, but I guess it doesn't. So we'll use this one. Right, this gives us the little preview so you can test it. If we click on this link, it opens it up, so that works great. We're going to leave this as is for now, just with Minnesota, so I can show you guys how this all works. So we hit OK and hit OK again. Now when I click and hover here, I get this Learn More button, but it takes us to the Minnesota page, right? We want this to be dynamic. We want what state we click on to filter into this. So it takes us to the state that we actually want to learn more about. So let's change that. Let's go back to dashboard, actions. Learn more is the one we want to update. So click on that. And then click edit. And we are going to get rid of the word Minnesota. So we just have wikipedia.org/wiki/nothing. And there's this little insert pane, right? We've seen this before in our tooltips. We've seen this before in our titles. It allows us to insert a variable that will be dynamic based on what we're clicking on. So if we click insert, you can see that the only fields that we have to work with on our map are the latitude, longitude, sum of sales, and state. So we're going to click on state. And now our Wikipedia link looks like this, wikipedia.org/wiki/ right in brackets state. So now you can see our preview changed to Alabama. I think it just goes in alphabetical order or whatever. So you can still test it. But now, if I hit OK and OK, if I were to click on like Texas, learn more, You can see that it keeps that base URL and then the state that we are clicking on. So I can go Florida, it updates. If I go to California, it updates. So this is kind of a, well, is this working for everyone? Do you guys need me to open back up that edit pane again? No? Okay, so the Wikipedia page is kind of a trivial example. I get that. Some real life use cases for this. I actually have, let me open something up. So we use Salesforce as our CRM. And it's moving really slow, but we use this all the time for like the dashboards our reps look at. They're about to call a prospect. We have a dashboard on there that shows them everything about that prospect that they're about to call. However, if we want them to be able to click in and learn more, the nice thing about Salesforce is if I click on a account, is the URL is consistent here, and this is the account ID. So I can copy and paste this URL in there. I can bring in account ID into my dashboard. So if a rep wants to go and learn more about the account, see when their last contact was, what other opportunities they have open, some different stuff like this, I can dynamically insert that account ID. Or it doesn't even need to be dynamic. Maybe you just want on your dashboard, a picture of the ODSA picture, and you want to be able to say, hey, you want to learn more about ODSA? You can go out to that URL too. So we're literally creating hyperlinks to direct people to different web pages inside of Tableau. We're essentially creating like our own landing page in a web browser, which is really, really cool that you can do it with drag and drop, because I'm sure that some of you guys have created web pages before. It gets a little messy. So the fact that we're able to do this with no coding experience is, to this day, blows my mind. So we're already, I'd say this is like the last thing that we didn't know how to build for our final project. We can click into our different states, our scatter plot updates. We can click into our state and get this learn more button. All that's left to do is kind of build out our different parameters to make this truly dynamic. And we are basically done with our final project. So any questions about what we've done up to this point so far? Otherwise, we'll start bringing in some parameters. No? Cool. Let's take a quick 10-minute break. We're about an hour in right now, then we'll come back and start building it out. So let's be back at 7:02.
Have you ever used Hex? The application? Have you ever used Hex, the application? Some of the machine learning folks at Redflow used it, and I've just been looking at it again today just because I was curious about where it fits into the ecosystem. I feel like it's kind of between maybe like Tableau and a JavaScript visualization.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it looks like the kind of like UI of Tableau with the customizability of like some dev environment stuff as well too.
Yeah, I think so. I think what we were trying to use it for is to help machine learning folks test like visualizations at a higher level for like the in-app stuff we wanted to build, but yet like would have taken us a lot of work to spin it up just to rip it back out again.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely say one of the downside, and they actually, I believe, they just came out with a new, I was gonna say one of the downsides of Tableau up to this point is like you build these vizzes, but people need viewer licenses to view them. So you can't like build a dashboard and put it on your website for everyone to view unless you want to buy viewer licenses or buy one of their enterprise packages for like hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff. So there's a few different players in this space trying to solve for this. Actually, someone that used to work at Millitrend and teaches at ODSA now, his name's Preston Nadir. He actually just started a company that does that. It's just a consulting firm. It's not like automated, but they just like look at your Tableau and build it via code and let you like publish it for free.
Yeah.
But I believe Tableau, just came out with this new embedded analytics, like trying to solve for that a little bit. And it looks like that's what Hex would be really, really good at too, is like do all your internal work, give an environment to be able to do your EDA, your machine learning, your visualization stuff and stuff like that, but then also be able to package it up and show it to the world. That's been like the one gripe I've had with Tableau for a long time. But yeah, this looks cool. I'm gonna actually send this to myself and check it out tomorrow because I'm always trying to stay up with the latest players in the space.
I know Preston a little bit.
Do you? Yeah, he's a great guy. All right. Give me 1 second, let me close the door. So we're gonna turn on these ones. So I can see the screen better, sorry about that. All right, so we're gonna start building out our parameters now. We will do the ones that we have kind of by default. And then let you guys build off of it. So for example, like sales and profit and like discount are all things that we can do really easily. Profit margin is gonna be a calculated field, days to ship is gonna be a calculated field. So that's what I'll have you guys kind of add in. But we'll start building these out so you guys have at least the foundation of everything you need to build on top of. So looking at this, let's make this a little bit more interactive moving forward. How many different parameters do we have on this dashboard? We have one here. What else? It's not a trick question. You guys can see a few of them. 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 total parameters. But looking into these a bit more, you can see that is the right answer, by the way. Yep. So we have 4 shown right here. But if you look, this one colors the states. it also colors this over here. So it's one parameter used two different places here for the color. You'll also notice that this is a measure parameter, right? So we're changing what we're measuring. We're measuring days to ship, we're measuring our average discounts. And what you'll notice is for our X and Y axis over here, we can change our X axis. Right now it's orders to be average discount, right? This updates here. And you'll notice that these values are the same as these values and the same as these values. So we can update our Y-axis here. So now we're showing days to ship. This is average discounts. Now we're showing orders here. So we have three measure parameters that are three distinct different parameters, but all showing the same thing. Why I wanted to cover that before we get going is that means if we build this one out right, we can just copy and paste it or duplicate it and rename it in Tableau name terms. And we won't have to build all three out from scratch. And then this would be not a measure parameter, but a measures and don't know.
String?
Dimension parameter. Yep, measures and dimensions. So these three are going to be changing what we're measuring. And this one here only changes this, but it is changing which dimension we're grouping by on our charts here. So we'll make three measures, one dimensions, and then we will do some fancy titling and changing stuff based on those. So when we click into one, it says colored by state Nebraska. When we change this, it'll update our title here. But we're just going to build out our four different parameters tonight and then build on top of it on Wednesday. So let's go back here and let's start with our measure parameters, since we'll only have to make one of those and then duplicate and rename it. And the first measure parameter that we're going to build is going to be this one here, so that what we color our state by, it'll also color our scatter plot by. So we can kind of get a 2-for-1 there. So let's go to our Tableau and let's just go back to our map sheet. Right now we're coloring by the sum of sales. We are going to create a new parameter to color by whatever measure we want. So let's go up here and let's do create parameter. And let's just call this measure parameter. This is going to be a string. So remember, what we're going to build out here is a list of options to say if it's sales, show some of sales, if it's profit, show some of profit, so on and so forth. Let's just do sales, profits, and orders. Those would be three really easy ones. So let's add our values here. And remember, kind of best practice here is to type them exactly as they appear over here, just so we don't get tripped up with capitalization, spelling, and stuff like this. So let's just type in sales, profits, and orders. Everyone have something that looks like this? Okay. We'll click OK. And then let's hit the little arrow here and just click show parameter. So we have this over here. And remember, I typically like to keep them as a,
Where did you click to show that?
this little arrow where it's under parameters. Click that and click show parameter. Then if you want to change it from a drop down to like a single value list, I typically go single value list for sure when I'm building stuff, so I can see what all my options are here. Maybe later on, I actually think in our put here, they'll all be drop downs just because they take up a little less space. But for building stuff out, it's nice to be able to reference what your options are. So for each one of these, we are going to be creating the parameter and then creating the calculated field that's going to be actually changing based on what the parameter is. So we have a parameter created, which is good. Now let's create our calculated field. So remember, we click this arrow up here, choose create calculated field, and now we have this bad boy. Let's again just call this measure. Let me make sure. Yeah, we'll call it measure parameter, just so we don't get lost. I was looking at my requirements for the final project to see if I specified what it should be called, but I didn't. So we'll title it measure parameter. And we're just gonna make our if statement. So if measure parameter equals sales, then sales, else if. I'm actually going to build it wrong to start, and I'm going to go back and change it to what it should be. Stick with me. Profit. Then, now notice, I didn't follow my own rule here, and I titled my measure parameter profits, even though my field over here is profit. That's fine. It will work, but this is exactly why I say always title it exactly what your measure is titled, because it would be so easy if I wasn't paying attention, you know, when I typed in if profit then profits, or if it equals profit then bring in the profit field, then it wouldn't have ever worked, right? Because I would have selected this and it would have said, okay, now it equals profits. And this if statement wouldn't have caught it because it doesn't equal profit. It equals profit. So you want to make sure that you're always typing in exactly what you have typed in over here. If you didn't follow me and typed in profit, then make sure here, whatever you have typed in your parameter is what you want in this string here. And then the last one, else if measure parameter equals orders, then and remember, orders is that freebie thing that it gives you automatically, right? Orders over here. And then finish it with an end. It's giving me an error. Okay. Okay, so I said I was building it out wrong, and I will show you why it's wrong, and then I will show you how to fix it. So we didn't have orders in here. We had, you know, if it equals sales, then sales, if it equals profits, then profits. This would work. If we hit OK here, we have our calculated field now called measure parameter. And if we drag this onto the sum, now I can go between sales and profits, and it works great. However, if I click order, nothing changes. I get this null thing. Why it was yelling at me here is notice how orders is a count. And in fact, for my other ones that we're going to build out, notice how we have an average in here as well. And we've done profit margins before, right, where we need to divide and show an average there. When I drag on my measure parameter calculated field here, it is summing it no matter what. Well, we don't want it to always sum it. For orders, we want it to count it. For our profit, for our discounts, we want it to average it. For our sum of sales, we want it to sum it, sure. But we actually need to tell it what we want it to do because clicking between these will change which measure we're showing, sure, but it's not changing how we're aggregating it. It's always going to be summing. So we're going to edit our calculated field again. And we're actually going to tell it what to do in here. So if it equals sales, then we want to do the sum of sales. Now it's saying, well, it can't mix aggregate and non-aggregate things. That's fine. We're going to aggregate everything. If it equals profit, then show the sum of profit. And then the last thing that we're going to do, if our measure parameter equals orders, then, and remember how you can, if you don't want to type stuff out, you can just drag it over. I'm just going to drag over this orders count thing right here. And it'll automatically bring in count of orders. Or if you didn't want to do that, but since I did it the first time, I figured I'd show you guys. We just type in count orders like that. So this is what it will look like right now. I'll leave this up for a second if you guys need to copy that over. So now if I hit OK, now this is giving me an error because it's still doing the sum of this. It says calculation sum can't be applied to user-defined aggregate. That's fine. Drag it off. Drag measure parameter back on there. Now see how it says AGG? We talked about that last week. It knows that we're aggregating it inside our calculated field here. So depending on what our parameter is, it's going to change. It will, if it's sales, it will sum it. If it's profits, it will sum it. If it's order, it will count it. And when you guys build out the rest of it on Wednesday, if it's discounts, it will average it. If it's profit margin, I think it will average it. I can't remember what I told you guys to do. But now we should be able to click through all these. Sales works, profits works, orders works. Does everyone have their measure parameter working across all three of these? Please let me know if you do not.
My third parameter is not highlighting it in purple.
Which one?
The else if
Oh, okay.
the second one, it's still in black.
What I would do is just get rid of whatever you have in there and just type it again, measure, and make sure you just click on measure parameter or tab it or enter it. And it should auto-complete there, auto-fill with your purple one.
So that's the same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just do equals. Single quote. Yep. Make sure it's a single quote. Orders. Oh, and then you'll just need just want to make sure that this is inside this
Oh.
Parentheses around this bad boy too. There. Now we should. Oh. We just need to drag this over. It's looking right now. There. Yep. Anyone else have any questions?
Well, I did mine a little different. I know I told you before I was kind of brute forcing my way through the map part, but I am sharing pictures as soon as Slack uploads them. But my measurement I made as the full list, and then it would call for the math to a different measurement.
Okay.
Because in my brain that made more sense.
Oh, okay. So you
That
did.
I did a calculated field for each measurement, and then another calculated field to call for them when the said thing was clicked.
Yeah. So you did this, so it would return sales, profits, or orders, no matter what. And then you created a new calculated field that would say, basically reference measure parameter each time, but sum it if it's on this, average it if it's on this, count it if it's on this, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. And I agree, that does, I think programmatically, that would probably, like some of the rules of code is you always want to modularize as much as you can. It's probably the right way to do it. So that if something breaks, it's separated a bit more, where here we're kind of doing two things at once here. So that's totally fine. Okay, so the good news is, right, we created one measure parameter, and we're going to be able to use it two different places here. So now if we go over to our scatter plot, let's drag category off of the colors, just drag it onto details here. So now it's still grouping by the categories that we have here, but it's not colored by them. But if we move measure parameter, which we just created, onto the color, and we can go ahead and on our measure parameter, go ahead and hit that arrow and hit show. Now if we click through each one of these, you can see that the same colors are working here. So all we did to change this one was make sure category is on your details, and our new calculated field measure parameter is on our color.
How do you get that measure parameter on the right?
For some reason, I just pop it.
This one? Oh, this right here. Yeah. Hit this arrow down under parameters on measure parameter, and just make sure you click show parameter. All right, so now big reveal. We'll see how it all comes together here. We have our map here. We have our scatter plot here. We just need to show our parameter somewhere so that we can change it, right? So to do that, we can go to either one of these. It doesn't matter. But if you hit the little arrow where it says more options, again, on either one works. And under parameters, we only have one option right now that we just created, the measure parameter. If we click that, it automatically pops up over here. So now we can change it over here. We click on sales, kind of anticlimactic. If we click on profits, you see both of these change. If we click on orders, you see both of these change. So we have one parameter now controlling both our map and our scatter plot. Now again, Wednesday, we'll make this look pretty, but just for the sake of kind of feature parity, let's move this above our map since that's where it will eventually end up here. So let's drag this over right here. And now we have our first parameter done. If anyone does not have this working, please let me know. Good. All right. So let's go back to our output. We've created this one, right? We're missing a few options in here still, but that's fine. Now we have two more measure parameters on here, right? But they're over on our scatter plot. Notice how these are exactly the same as this one is, same exact options. But this one is changing our x-axis, and this one's changing our y-axis. So all we're going to do is just duplicate that same measure parameter and rename it x-axis and y-axis. And then we will be able to change how we are, what things we're showing on our scatter plot here. So let's go back to Tableau Public. Let's go to our scatter plot. And let's go underneath, right? We have our measure parameter right here. All we have to do is hit this arrow and hit duplicate. Now we have a measure parameter copy. I think you can just double click in there. Nope, don't do that. Hit the arrow again and choose rename. Let's just call this x-axis. Now, we don't want, right, we created our measure parameter calculated field, but we don't want what we change in our measure parameter, right? This is changing that calculated field right here. These are going to be two new calculated fields. So each parameter will have a corresponding calculated field. So what I would do, what I think the easiest way is to do, I'm a huge fan of copying and pasting whenever I can. Let's go ahead and duplicate this measure parameter calculated field, this bad boy. Duplicate it. And then let's go ahead and edit it. So now everything's going to stay exactly the same, but instead of referencing our measure parameter, the first one we made, we want to reference our x-axis. So what I would do is just click on each one of these and type in x and hit OK for x-axis. And you can just copy and paste that bad boy down. So now it's not going to look at the measure parameter. It's going to look at the new one we just created, x-axis, and reference if that equals sales, then sum of sales. If that equals profit, then sum of profits. And if that equals orders, then count of orders.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Well, why did the other one have parameters?
It automatically adds it in. So if I hit OK here, then go back in and hit edit.
Okay.
Oh, it didn't actually. Eventually it will. It wants you to be as specific as possible. It wants you to type in. I actually don't know if you can. That's a really good question. I don't know.
If you were to rename your calculated field x-axis, that's when it forces you to separate it. Since you only have one thing labeled x-axis, it doesn't have an issue.
Okay, so since I had a parameter called measure parameter, and I had a calculated field called measure parameter, it made me say this is a parameter dot measure parameter. And to avoid that, because I'm already getting confused referencing measure parameter so many times, let's make sure we call this like value x-axis. So now we have a parameter x-axis and we have a value x-axis. So it should look like this. You can see now we have a new calculated field called value x-axis. And our x-axis, remember, is this one, so it's showing profit right now. We're going to drag our new value x-axis up and replace profit. So now to test it, let's go back to our x-axis and hit that arrow. Hit show parameter. Now if I click into this and go sales, you can see our value x-axis changed. If I go profits, it changes. If I go orders, it changes. If I update our first measure parameter, it will change the color. But it does not change how where my dots are being scattered across the plot. Did everyone have this so far? Good. Good. Head nods. All right, we're going to do that one more time for our y-axis here. So let's go ahead and duplicate either one of our parameters, remember, because they're exactly the same. And then we're going to retitle this one y-axis, or rename this one. Remember, it's just hitting that arrow, duplicate, then hitting the arrow under copy, and hitting rename. So we should have three now, our measure parameter, our x-axis, and our y-axis. So now the last thing that we need to do is create our corresponding calculated field. So you can duplicate either your measure parameter calculated field or your value x-axis calculated field. I'm going to do the value x-axis, hit duplicate. Then in our new value x-axis copy calculated field, I'm going to edit it. I'm going to call it value y-axis. And then I'm going to go through my calculated field. Instead of the x-axis parameter, I'm going to reference the y-axis. And that should be all you need to do. It should look just like this. Then if you go ahead and hit OK, now we're going to replace our y-axis. So we have sales right there right now on rows. We're going to drag our value y-axis up on top of some of the sales. So now our column should be this nice ag value x-axis. Our rows should be this nice ag value y-axis. And then to test it, we're going to go back to our y-axis parameter, hit that arrow, hit show parameter. Now we have 3 over here. So if we update the y-axis, that should change. Make sure you go through sales, profits, and orders. All 3 should change. If we go through our x-axis, sales, profits, orders, all three of those should change. And then if we go through our measure parameter, sales, profits, orders, the colors should change. Any questions? Cool. So we'll bring it back together one last time. Let's go back to our dashboard. Now we have our two more parameters we need to bring into our dashboard. So in our scatter plot, let's click that arrow. And under parameters, you should now have options for x-axis and y-axis. So click those one by one. We'll bring in x-axis. It goes right here. Click our arrow, parameters, y-axis, right here. And we should have something that looks like this. So we can change our measure parameter over here. Right now it's on orders. Sales updates the colors on both. Profits updates the colors on both. Orders updates the colors on both. X-axis just updates this. Sales, profits, orders. Y-axis, sales, profits, orders. So we've already, with these three parameters, each of them have three options. So just basic permutation, three options times three options times three options. We've created 27 different views of how we can analyze the same data just with these two different charts. We have three different options for how we color it, three different options for what we show on our x-axis, three different options for what we show on the y-axis. That yields 27 different distinct combinations of things that we can choose and ultimately give to our end user. Because remember, the goal of this is to create a self-service dashboard. So someone that does not know how to use Tableau at all can click around and learn everything they need to know about our Superstore data. I'm going to keep asking this because I want Wednesday to be really easy. Is this working for everyone? Are there any questions, anything that doesn't look like how mine looks? Anything you don't understand? All right, then we are going to go in and add our very last parameter, the last one that we'll need to create for the, I totally lied. We don't just have 27 parameters, right? Because we can click into each state already too, and it'll update. So 27 times 50, right, times 100, 270 divided by 2. So there's 135 different combinations of things that we can, that seems wrong. 1,350? 37 times 50. Yeah, 1,350, because we can click into each state and show a different view as well too. So we've already created 1,350 different ways to look at the same data with the stuff we've done already. I guess you could technically select multiple states as well too. So the permutation is probably in the millions already, but I digress. We're going to create one more. The last one that we're going to create is going to be this breakout parameter here. So this is we've done three different measure parameters. Now we're going to do a dimension parameter. So we're going to be able to group by different cities, different product names, different subcategories, different shipping modes, different categories. We'll go ahead and add in all 5 of these since there's already a lot of different stuff that we're going to have to change on this. So let's go back to Tableau. Let's go into our scatter plot. And again, stick with me. This will be the last parameter we make tonight. But we're going to start fresh because we're not going to be using the same 3 or the same measures that we used in our first 3. So we're going to click this arrow up here. and choose create parameter. And let's just go ahead and call this breakout. This is still going to be a string data type, and it's still going to be a list. The options, let me drag this over to the side here. The options are going to be category, ship mode, and again, I'm going to do a better job of typing these in exactly how I type them, or exactly how they're shown over on our dimension shelf. Category, ship mode, sub, capital S, dash, category, capital C. Hit enter. Product, capital P, space, name, capital N. Our last one is going to be city. So it should look like this. It's titled breakout. The data type is a string. The allowable values are a list. And the values we've typed in are category, ship mode, subcategory, product name, and city. We'll give everyone just a couple seconds to make sure they have those all typed in. Once you have it, go ahead and hit OK. And you can see down here we have a new parameter. Let's go ahead and hit that arrow and hit show parameter to start, because we're going to need to reference it. And it should pop up over to the right. And then instead of a drop down, let's hit that arrow over on the right side and change this to a single value list so that we can see what all of our different options are. Now, just like we did before, we're going to create a corresponding calculated field. So hit this arrow and choose create calculated field. And let's just call this, let's call it breakout value. I'm going to type the first couple and then see if you guys can finish it out on your own. So if, right, we want to reference our breakout parameter, so we'll type breakout equals category, typed exactly like that. Then category, it should be purple for the parameter, orange for this field over here. Else if breakout equals ship mode, typed in exactly how I have it over here. Then ship mode, hit tab over. I'm going to give you guys like a minute to see if you can finish it out on your own, to go through these next three here. Don't forget to finish it with an end statement. And then once I give you guys like a minute, I will type through the rest myself too. All right, if you guys are done or just want to spot check, I'll go ahead and finish this out. Else if breakout equals subcategory and subcategory. Else if breakout equals product name and product name. And last one, else if breakout equals city, then city and. So we should have 5 total kind of if else clauses here. They should all be referencing a purple breakout because we're referencing our parameter, which is right over here. We should have category with a capital C, ship mode with a capital S and M, subcategory, make sure you have a dash in there, product name, and city, and then each one of those should reference the corresponding dimension over to the left, category, ship mode, subcategory, product name, and city. So now we have a calculated field called breakout value that based on what I choose over here will return a different dimension. So now, instead of grouping by category, which is on our details pane here, we are going to bring breakout value over and replace category. And right now mine is already showing categories, so nothing should have changed. But if I hit ship mode, you can now see I have, if I hover over it, standard class, second class, first class, same day. I can change to subcategory. We got a ton more dots on there. There's paper, there's furnishing, there's phones, product name, and city. Is that working for everyone?
Mine looks a bit different.
Okay, it could look different because on my, it's kind of boring right here. See how my x-axis and my y-axis is both on orders. So I'm showing orders by orders, so it's perfectly linear. If I change one of these to like sales, then it will look, update based on that. I could also change my color to be like profits. Then my color will change based on each one of these as well too. Remote folks, is that working for everyone? Couple head nods. Okay, the last thing we'll do, then we'll take another break, is go back to our dashboard. And just like before, we have our parameters shown on here. We just need to add in that new breakout one that we just added. So let's click on scatter plot. Let's click the arrow. Under parameters, you see we have this new breakout option. Let's add that in there. And now we have our breakout. Just because it's the way I had it on the example, let's click that arrow, click on breakout, choose the arrow, more options, and choose the single value list. Now we should be able to click on each one of those. They should all update. It's always good to double check your other parameters too to make sure you didn't break anything. So if I change my y-axis, it should update. Those all work. If I change my x-axis, these should all update. Those all work. And if I change my measure parameter, it should change the color on both of those. So now we had, what was our last one? 1350 times. We just added in 5 more options. Now we have 6,750 different permutations that we can show on the same dashboard. Is this all working for everyone? Any questions about what we've done so far? Cool. Let's take a 10-minute break. let's be back by 8 o'clock, and we'll kind of wrap things up for the night. All right, we'll get going in a couple minutes here. Give everyone a chance to come back. Okay, we're gonna go for probably 15 to 30 more minutes and then call it. And then before we wrap up, I will share this Word doc of kind of the final requirements. The good news is we'll go through it together before we leave, and you'll see that most of this is already done. It's just kind of some cleanup stuff. I did decide during that last break, I am not going to, you guys can definitely work ahead, but I'm going to try not to help anyone until Wednesday, just so everyone has the opportunity to try to do this on your own, just because I think you learn better that way. So if you want to work ahead, that would be your homework. Just work on the final project for Wednesday. If you want to call it tonight, that's totally fine, because we have 3 hours Wednesday as well too to finish this up. But I'll go through kind of like what all we need to do and change, and make sure you have all the information that you need to finish this on your own, and then we'll actually wrap it up Wednesday as well. So the only thing that we have left to do as far as parameters are concerned is, you will see on this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different options in all 3 of my measure parameters, as opposed to just the 3 that we had. Good news is the dimension parameter is already done. So let's show you guys how we can go in and add more options to our measure parameter. So let's just go to let's work out of our map for right now. Right, we have our measure parameter here. We have sales, profits, and orders. Let's say that we want to do average discount. I think that was one that I had in here. Average discount. So we're going to actually update our measure parameter. So we hit this arrow underneath measure parameter, choose edit. Right, you can see our 3 options in here right now are sales, profits, and orders. I can click into here, and let's actually type in average discount. Now this one's a little bit different because I'm not typing it in exactly as I have it over here, right? My field name is just called discount. Here I'm actually saying average discount. If I wanted to, you've seen the second column that we haven't talked about at all during this course, and we've worked with parameters for like 2 nights now. The value is what I reference in my calculated field, right? So in my measure parameter, this is the value I'm referencing. This can be whatever I want it to be, right? I always just name it whatever my field is called, so I don't get tripped up on capitalization, pronunciation, stuff like that. However, it doesn't have to be that. So if I want to, if I open back up my measure parameter, if I want to keep that same theme going, I can make my value right here be discount. That way I can reference it exactly like I'm referencing it over here for my field name, capital D, discount. However, that might be confusing to our end user because they don't know, is that the sum of discounts, is that the average discount, is that the median? So maybe I want to change how it's being displayed to make it easier for the end user. So if I double click into this display as, I can change this to average discount. I could change this to ASDF. I could change this to whatever I want it to be. But the value is what I'm going to be referencing in my calculated field. So I want to have at least, you don't have to do this. You could just make the value average discount and reference that. But I want to show you guys why it's important to have like a value and a display as option. Because as we've talked about before in this class, sometimes you will have ugly strings that your developer or whatever dumps into your database, and it's called 123 underscore ASDF underscore enum number 24 underscore test or something like that, right? You want to be able to reference that value, but obviously you don't want to show it to your end user. So I do actually change quite a bit of these from day to day. But the important thing to remember is value is what you're referencing in your calculated field. display as is what will show up in here. So if I hit OK, you can see I have average discount now. But if I click into this, nothing changes, right? It goes to null, it's broken. Why is it broken? Because we don't have a case in our if statement for when that equals discount, right? So I open up my measure parameter here. I hit edit. And I need to add a new case here. So I'm going to go else if measure parameter. And again, I just type in, you don't need to worry about the parameters dot, just type in measure and it will pop up, measure parameters, equals, now what am I going to type here? Discount, bingo, exactly like it shows up here. Not what I'm displaying here, I'm changing how it's being displayed for the end user's benefit, but I'm going to reference discount. Then, what am I going to aggregate by? Sum, count, average. Yep. So type in AVG, and we are going to be averaging our discount value here. So all we did, right, so we just added this new line in here. If it equals discount, which is what the value of this is, then average the field discount. So now if I hit OK, you can see that this updates. I can still do orders, I can still do profits, I can still do sales, but now I can do average discount as well. And if I go back into my dashboard, you can see that updating this appropriately updates both the map and the scatter plot.
So the discount's obviously the percent, right? And it's giving us a decimal.
Yeah.
Is that a thing that we'll be able to fix?
No. Yeah, so the question was, this is technically a percent. Can you make it show as a percent sometimes in the currency, other times you cannot. You can change how you're aggregating it. You can change what fields you're aggregating by. But the output here, right, we can't go into, typically what we would do, right, is we would go into measure parameter. We'd hit default properties, we'd hit number format, and we would change this to a percent. But then when we go to sales, it would be a percent, orders, it would be a percent. So unfortunately, we have to just keep that as automatic. But you can see our two other ones, our x-axis and our y-axis, don't have that in there. So one of the steps that you'll need to do to finish this out will be to go in and add in discount to both your x-axis and your y-axis parameters. You will also need to go into your value x-axis and your value y-axis calculated fields and add in that discount. And then there's also, right, so we have profit, we have sales, we have orders, we have average discount. We'll need to create days to ship. So hopefully you guys remember how to do that, right? We created a calculated field and did a date diff between order date and ship date. Profit margin, right? We remember how to do that. Take the sum of the profit divided by the sum of the sales. And I actually probably should have specified in here if it's total profit margin or average profit margin. Do whatever you feel like, I guess. Quantity should just be a default field in here, right? Quantity, right? So that one will be easy. So you'll just need to build out those different options. Some of them you'll need to create calculated fields first and then bring those in. Some of them you'll just be able to add in exactly in here. And don't worry, it's all scoped out in this doc we'll go through. But you'll need to do that for all of these measure parameters. The breakout parameter is already done, so that's easy. The filtering is done. That dashboard action is done. All right, the next two things we'll do is we'll change our axis labels here. right? Profit margin and sales. What's funny is when I built this last year, there actually wasn't a way to do that. So if you hover over this or if you were to download it, actually what I did was I created sheet titles. And these are actually different sheets. But since then, in the past year, Tableau updated it to make it way easier. So I'll show you the easy way now. So let's go to our scatter plot. And we're just going to double click into our axis here. Right, and you can see by default, this is showing value y-axis. I could change this to whatever I want it to be, and it would update here. However, the title, where it says custom here, if I click on the custom, it will have use value, and it's showing our different parameters here. So here we're updating the y-axis, so we're just going to choose y-axis right here. So now it's showing orders as our axis label. If I click and change that to sales, you can see the axis label changes to sales. If I choose profits, you can see that changes to profits. The x-axis is exactly the same. If I double click into this, I just click on that custom and I choose x-axis. Now if I change my x-axis to profits, that updates. Orders, that updates. My y-axis still works too. So that piece is done. Notice how in my title here, depending on what my X and Y axis is, right? This is sales. If I change it to profit, it says profit margin versus profit. Profit margin versus profit. We'll want to go in and update those. We've talked through that before, but I'm not going to show you guys because I want you to try some stuff on your own. The other thing is in parentheses here, right? When I click into one, it says colored by profit margin. I change this to average discount. It says, so it's kind of small, I know. Colored by average discount, colored by profit margin, colored by quantity. So we'll want to make sure we change this title to some different things. And for state all, if I click into Nebraska, it says for state Nebraska. So we'll want to make sure to change that. And then the last kind of cool thing I have in here is just an ODSA picture. I'll actually go ahead and just drop that picture in the Slack channel so you guys don't need to go and download it. But we will add that in there as well. We covered at the beginning of the class. All right, you guys should all have access to that picture now. Sweet, so I believe you have all the building blocks. You'll just need to update some titles, add in some different parameter values, add in a picture here. Please feel free to take some creative liberties. It doesn't need to look exactly like this. If you want to change the colors, change the colors. If you want it to be the map on the right, scatter plot on the left, feel free. If you want them on top of each other, that's great. If you want to go above and beyond and add in like an additional chart, maybe a bar chart or a line chart or something like that, feel free to do that as well. But this is kind of the bones of what you need to do. Let's go through the final assignment Word doc. This is what I'll say, or I'll send you guys. If you have any questions, ask them now, because I'm assuming some of you guys will want to work ahead, but don't feel obligated to. So, final night, this is what we're going to make. You guys are all very familiar with it now. This is the link, so I'll send this Word doc. If you want to reference it, feel free. Create a parameter to allow the user to choose between total profit, total sales, average discount, average days to ship, average profit margin, right? We already have profit, sales, and discount in there, so you just need to add a couple more. Note, days to ship and profit margin are calculated fields, so make sure you create those first. And since we're going between totals and averages, aggregate them inside your calculated field. We already did that, right, with our sums, counts, averages. So you guys are good there. Create a map colored by the measure parameter created in step 1. We already have that done. Create the scatter plot. We'll need 2 more measure parameters. We already have those, x-axis and y-axis. So that part's done. These will be the same, so you can duplicate and rename them. You name them whatever you want, but we named ours. I actually hate, next year I'm going to change this. Measure parameter is just a horrible name to name this. It should have been called like color parameter or something. But I named it the same thing just so when you guys reference the requirement doc, you know that's the same thing that we have in our Tableau public thing. And then remember, for each parameter, you'll need to create a corresponding calculated field. So we already have those calculated fields created, but as you're going through and adding in more options to each of your parameters, don't forget to go back to the calculated fields and add in those else if statements for the calculated fields as well. We already have our dimension parameter created. That's what we're grouping the scatter plot by. And we already have all our different options in there, so don't need to worry about adding any of those. And it's already colored by the same measure parameter, so you shouldn't have to make any updates there. They're already both in the dashboard. Feel free, if you don't like the layout, to mess around with the spacing and layout. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. We already have the dashboard action that filters based on what state we click on, and the dashboard action that takes us to a Wikipedia page. So those pieces are done. And then make sure that you use everything that we've learned up to this point to make it look good. So titles are horrible right now. They should not be called map and scatter plot, right? Make sure you change those. Take advantage of the parameters, right? That's what I was talking about in here, where if you click on one or update one, the title changes. Make sure to take advantage of white space, get rid of any chart junk, except for the ODSA picture, of course. Maximize your data ink ratio. Colors, font, size, layouts, whatever you think looks best. Take some creative liberties there. Feel free on Wednesday, not tonight, because I want you guys to give it the old college effort first before I help. But I will be walking around on Wednesday, making sure everything that's functioning as desired. If you want to work ahead, publish it to Tableau Public, shoot me the link tonight or tomorrow, or even early Wednesday. I will try to get to it, but remember I do work a full 8 to 5 on top of this, so if I don't get time, I apologize, but I will have time Wednesday to double check anything. As soon as I make sure it hits all these requirements, I will give you your certificate if you're here. If you're not here, we will be mailing you those certificates. They're actually really nice. Both Nate and I sign them. You can they're printed out on like really nice cardstock. They look fancy. You can frame them, put them behind your wall or whatever. And then you're ready to take over the data viz world. Woo. Any questions on final project, this requirement doc, anything we covered tonight, anything we didn't cover tonight? This is kind of your last chance to ask questions before Wednesday, which again, I'll be here to help you through anything Wednesday as well too. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. But if you want to work ahead, any questions that you guys have?
If something is missing from the Word document, you will let us know where to fix it.
Yep. People online, any questions? Cool. We'll wrap for tonight. Feel free to stick around and work on it if you want. But again, I'm not going to help until Wednesday. So you guys try to do it on your own first. I'm not being a rude person. I'm just trying to be a good teacher. Sweet. Thank you guys. Have a fantastic night. Make sure, as some people already dropped, save what you have. You don't want to start from scratch. Save it, publish it, save it, make a copy, save it, whatever you got to do. Make sure it's saved.
Good night.
Thanks, Charlie. Yep, good night.